The town of Eldermore was shrouded in an eerie silence, a forgotten place. Time seemed to stand still. Ancient trees lined the narrow streets, their branches heavy with moss. The houses were old, Victorian structures with peeling paint and boarded-up windows. Among them stood Blackwood House, a mansion, grand and imposing. A shadow hung over it, a history of whispers and rumors. The locals knew its secrets, or so they thought. They spoke in hushed tones of the Blackwood family, a family that had vanished without a trace. Some said the house was cursed, others claimed it was haunted by the spirits of the Blackwood family. No one dared to go near it. The house stood at the edge of town, a silent sentinel, a testament to a forgotten tragedy. It was a place of mystery and fear, a place where the veil between the living and the dead was thin. Clara Thompson arrived in Eldermore on a gray and windy day. She was an artist, drawn to the unusual and the forgotten. She had heard stories of Blackwood House, its beauty and its tragedy. She decided to rent it, hoping to find inspiration within its walls. She paid no heed to the warnings of the townsfolk. They told her the house was haunted. She dismissed their fears as superstition. She was a woman of logic and reason. She didn't believe in ghosts, at least not yet. Clara was captivated by the house. It was a grand old mansion, with high ceilings and large windows. The rooms were filled with antique furniture, covered in dust sheets. She could sense the history in the air, the weight of the past. She felt a strange pull, as if the house itself was calling to her. The first few days were uneventful. Clara spent her time exploring the house, sketching its eerie beauty. She felt a sense of peace, an unexpected calmness. But as the sun began to set each day, the atmosphere changed. Shadows seemed to grow longer, and the silence was broken by strange noises. Floorboards creaked, doors slammed shut, whispers carried on the wind. Clara tried to ignore these occurrences, attributing them to the age of the house, but deep down, a seed of doubt began to grow. One night, Clara was awakened by a cold spot in the room. She felt a presence, something unseen, watching her. She sat up in bed, her heart pounding. She listened intently, but the only sound was the beating of her own heart. She tried to dismiss it as a bad dream, but the feeling of dread lingered. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was not alone. Clara's curiosity got the better of her. She began to research the history of Blackwood House. She discovered an old diary, hidden in the attic. It belonged to Elizabeth Blackwood, the former mistress of the house. The diary was filled with Elizabeth's thoughts and fears. She wrote of strange occurrences and a growing sense of dread. Elizabeth believed the house was haunted. She wrote of cold spots, unexplained noises, and shadowy figures. She mentioned a presence, something dark and sinister, lurking within the walls. Clara dismissed the diary at first, considering it the ramblings of a troubled mind. But as she read on, she couldn't shake the feeling that Elizabeth's words held a grain of truth. Elizabeth's diary entries became more frantic. She described being touched by unseen hands, hearing voices whispering her name. She wrote of a fear that consumed her. Her last entry was chilling. "He is here," she wrote. "I can feel him. He is coming for me." The diary ended abruptly, leaving Clara with a sense of unease and a growing sense of dread. One night, Clara experienced something that could no longer be ignored. She was working late in her studio when she felt a cold breeze and a presence behind her. She turned slowly, her heart pounding in her chest, and there, standing in the doorway, was a figure. It was the ghostly apparition of a woman, dressed in a long white gown. Her face was pale and drawn, her eyes filled with sadness and fear. Clara was frozen in place, unable to move or speak. She watched as the figure glided towards her. The ghost stopped in front of Clara, her sorrowful eyes locked on Clara's. Clara felt a wave of sadness wash over her, along with an overwhelming sense of fear. She knew she was in the presence of something supernatural and unknown. She wanted to scream, to run, but she couldn't. She was rooted to the spot, trapped by the ghost's gaze. The ghostly figure reached out a translucent hand. Her touch sent a chill down Clara's spine. Clara felt a surge of empathy for the ghost. She could sense her pain and her fear. She knew that this woman, this Elizabeth Blackwood, was trapped, unable to move on. Elizabeth's lips moved, but no sound came out. Clara strained to hear, to understand. She closed her eyes and focused on the presence in front of her. She felt a rush of energy, a wave of emotions, and then she heard it, a voice, whispering in her mind. "Help me," the voice pleaded. "Please, help us." Clara understood. This was not a malicious haunting. Elizabeth and the other spirits trapped here were not here to harm her. They were seeking her help. Clara felt a sense of purpose, a need to help these lost souls, to free them from their torment. Clara began to delve deeper into the history of the Blackwood family. She spent countless hours at the local library, poring over old newspapers and historical records. She discovered that the Blackwood family had not simply vanished. They had been murdered. Their deaths were brutal and unexplained. The killer was never found. The townsfolk had whispered about a curse, but the truth was far more sinister. It was a crime, a terrible act that had left innocent souls trapped in the house. Clara felt a surge of anger and a determination to right this wrong. She owed it to Elizabeth and to the other victims to bring their killer to justice and to free them from their ghostly prison. Clara's research led her to the Blackwood family lawyer, an elderly man who had been a young clerk at the time of the murders. He provided her with a crucial piece of information, a hidden room, located deep within the house, a room that had been sealed off after the murders. He warned Clara not to go there, but Clara was determined to uncover the truth. Armed with her newfound knowledge, Clara decided to confront the supernatural force haunting Blackwood House. She knew that the hidden room held the key to the mystery. She waited until nightfall. The house creaked and groaned around her. The air grew heavy with anticipation. She could feel the presence of the spirits watching her, guiding her. Clara made her way down to the basement. She found the hidden room concealed behind a wall. She broke through the wall, heart pounding in her chest. She stepped inside. The room was dark and dusty, the air thick with the scent of decay. In the center of the room, she found a wooden chest, and beside it, a ghostly figure. It was the patriarch of the Blackwood family, the man who had murdered his family in a fit of jealous rage. He had then taken his own life, unable to live with the guilt of his actions. He was trapped here, bound to the house by his crimes. He was the source of the haunting, the keeper of the secrets that bound the spirits of his family to this place. Clara confronted the ghostly figure. She spoke with a newfound courage. She told him she knew the truth about what he had done. The figure raged against her, trying to frighten her, to silence her. But Clara stood firm. She would not be intimidated. She demanded that he release the spirits of his family. Clara's words seemed to have an effect. The ghostly figure flickered, his rage replaced by a look of anguish. He reached out a hand as if seeking forgiveness. Clara stepped forward and placed her hand in his. She felt a surge of energy, a wave of despair, and then peace. The room was filled with a blinding white light. Clara closed her eyes, shielding them from the glare. When she opened her eyes again, the ghostly figure was gone. The room was empty. She could feel a sense of peace, a lightness that had not been there before. The spirits of the Blackwood family were free. The next morning, Eldermore awoke to a different Blackwood house. The oppressive atmosphere was gone, replaced by a sense of tranquility. The townsfolk watched from a distance, whispering amongst themselves. The sun shone brightly on the house for the first time in a long time. Clara emerged from the house. She looked tired, but there was a sense of closure in her eyes. She had faced her fears and helped those who could not help themselves. She had brought peace to Blackwood House. She had solved the mystery and laid the ghosts to rest. Clara packed her belongings and said goodbye to Blackwood House. She would never forget her time there, the horrors she faced, and the peace she found. She knew that the spirits of the Blackwood family were finally at rest, and that their souls were free from their earthly bonds. Clara left Eldermore a changed woman. She had stared into the face of the supernatural and emerged stronger. She no longer dismissed the stories of the supernatural. She had seen firsthand the power that lies beyond our understanding. She carried the experience with her, a reminder that there is more to this world than meets the eye. She continued her work as an artist, but her art took on a new dimension, a depth and an understanding that had not been there before. Clara never spoke publicly about her experience at Blackwood House. She knew that few would believe her, and fewer still would understand. But she carried the memory of that night and the lessons she had learned close to her heart. A reminder that even in the darkest of places there is always hope, and that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is to face our fears.